Zandra, I'm so excited to welcome you to Tamarindo. I'm so happy to have you here.
I'm so happy to be back and to have a reunion with you. It's been
Yeah,
years, few
it has, but I always
years,
feel so close
since we
because
saw each other.
know.
Well, LinkedIn keeps us close, Instagram keeps us close. Yeah, it's great. It's great to stay connected. But thank you for inviting me. I'm excited about our conversation and our catch up.
Yes. Okay. So for the listeners who may not know, we used to work together a few years ago, back when you still lived in the US, but now you live in Amsterdam. So I
Yeah.
just want to first start there. Like, what is it like to be a Latina living in Europe and, just relocating at this stage in your career and in your life?
Yeah, so maybe I'll set the context a little bit. So I moved 4 years ago in December, actually, in 2021, and it was at the end of working at UnidosUS, a large national civil rights organization, leading communications there. That's where you and I met and worked together. And as you recall, those 4 or 5 years I was at Unidos were under the first Trump administration and were under COVID, right? The sort of beginning, mid of COVID. So they were very, very challenging years. And because of COVID, my husband, who works in hospitality, was without work for about 18 months. And then 2021 came along and things started to open up a little bit with COVID. He got this job opportunity and we thought about it, but it was kind of like an easy decision to make because it was a very challenging year. So, kind of the pressures of the work that I had. Plus, that year, I don't even know if you know, I got diagnosed with breast cancer. And then that was also the year that my mom passed away. So, all of those things had happened in 2021. We found out about this opportunity in the summer, and then I moved in December. So, it was a consequential year, so that puts the context in. Moving here felt like a fresh start. It felt like an opportunity to start new. I took a year and a half off. I thought I was going to have a 6 month break, and those 6 months turned into a year and a half of decompressing, honestly, and just grieving and getting to know my new environment, enjoying life somewhere else, getting to know what it was like to live somewhere else. And that was, I know, from a place of privilege. Not everybody gets to do that. Not everybody gets to walk away from their career, especially what I think was a very successful career. And I was kind of like trending in all the up directions that you would expect for a Latina at the highest level of the organization from a communication standpoint, and to just turn around and say, I really, really need a break. And I get to do it in a new environment, and I get to do it exploring, right? A new life. So it was a very interesting time, but then that led me to my pivot into no longer wanting to be employed, but instead being a consultant. So that's a long way of getting to your question because I did want to set the context. Is living as a Latina in Europe has been very interested. It's not much in Amsterdam, it's a very international city. So it's not much like other nationalities living here. You know, the kind of the culture, the country really accepts a lot of people from other different places. But as a Latina, I will tell you that living here, I feel much more Latina than I do estadounidense. I don't want to say American.
Mm,
I
hmm
feel
hmm
much more Latina. I feel like I lean into my Latinidad much more. And I think for a couple of reasons, right? Like when people meet me and see me, I'm not the stereotypical looking American person. So that's maybe one. And I also think that being away, I grew up as like you did, very Mexican at home, but also very American, right? I was educated American, so I think I'm that 200%, right? 100%
hmm
Latina and 100% American. But I think being so far away from home, the things I miss the most are the things from my home, the food, my family, the culture, the sort of cultural thing of, oh, Sundays you see the family and you go to everybody's thing and you're in everybody's business. So that sort of thing. So it has made me feel much more rooted and grounded in my own culture, um, in my Latinidad, in my Mexican American culture more than American culture. And I think people are genuinely interested. They're interested in here in Europe in sort of that duality, and they're interested in sort of no understanding more about Mexico and Mexican culture. So it's been interesting. It hasn't been hard at all. It's been
Yeah.
a nice, easy adaptation for sure.
Well, first, I want to thank you for sharing all those, like being vulnerable with us and walking us through that. Because, first of all, I'm so glad to know that you're healthy now,
Yes.
and I have so
Thank
much love
you.
and compassion for what that year was for you, right? It was such a heavy year, but I'm also so happy with like knowing that, right, that you're feeling so um, rooted in your identity and who you are, and that identity is celebrated. I think, especially right
Yes.
now, that's just such a breath of
Yes.
fresh air to know that that's something that people are interested in, that people love about you, and that this distance has maybe helped you appreciate it in a different way, right? In a new
Well, I
light.
was just gonna apologize because you're just saying that, and I recognize how I rambled through all of that like
Oh,
it was nothing, and it's not. But I think time gives you perspective, distance gives you perspective, and it's been for almost 5 years now since then, that time period. But I do want to say that I think it's a testament that, you know, things like that, experiences like that make you stronger and they help you grow and they help you grow in a different direction that you had absolutely no idea you were heading towards. And that's what happened to me. Like, you know me, Brenda, from the days at Unidos. Like, you could have foreseen that maybe I would have kept going and maybe next I would have jumped to a corporate CCO job or a chief communications something somewhere else. But like the situation made me stop and it made me take stock of things. So yeah, I appreciate your comment, but I didn't mean to make it sound like, oh, it was easy, right? No, it wasn't.
hmm
But
hmm
um, but now I could look back and say, and I say this to people all the time, breast cancer was the best thing that happened to me. And I know that's not uh, a funny thing, but for me, it was because if I wouldn't have had cancer, I wouldn't have reevaluated my life and I wouldn't have stopped to rethink and pause and to really make decisions that were best for me versus best for the expectations that maybe our parents have or society has or others have seen your trajectory and your career trajectory.
Yeah, yeah. Well, before we dive into what you're doing now, I just want to say that something that I've always observed about you is that you've always had this love and adoration for the Mexican culture, and I know that you're known for hosting friends and making them delicious food and salsas. And I know this is something that you've carried over to Amsterdam. So how does this show up where you live now?
I think I told you I feel like I'm leaning in more into my culture. So first thing, there's something about when you're dropped in the place you find your people. And really quickly, like I've met like many Mexicans that live here. So that's one thing. And Mexican Americans. I've also found a lot of Americans that live here. There's more probably American Latinos and everything like that. I even found, and I'm not a super churchgoer, but I found a mass in Spanish, a Catholic mass in Spanish that you
Wow.
could go to on Sundays. So it's like there's some parts of living here that sort of makes that inclusivity happen. And there's a lot of Latinos, mainly Colombianos, and some South Americans. There's also a lot of Spanish, obviously, from Spain that live here too. So anyway, you kind of find your people. But I think in moving here and really missing home and missing good Mexican food, we have started to host just friends over. And anytime we have a dinner party or anytime we have friends over, mainly Europeans or Americans, um, we end up cooking Mexican food. And it's interesting, Brenda, because you start to see Mexican food through a different lens and you're almost reliving what it's like to taste those flavors for the first time. We take it for granted, the sour with the spicy with the fat. We take for granted that complex flavor
Mhm.
profile that goes into the moles and the ceviches. And when I make it here, like people are like in awe. Like I people probably have had tacos and things like that, but they haven't had moles or pipianes or ceviches or aguachiles. So as we're hosting our friends, it's been really interesting, but it's also been a proud moment to see how people react and how they talk about the Mexican food in ways that maybe we've never talked about it because we're so close to it and we expect it, but in a very beautiful way. They're giving an expression of something that they are just experiencing maybe for the first time or for not many times before. So with that, we decided to do a supper club. So we
Mhm.
just started in December, and the idea was, how do we bring people together around the love for Mexican food, but how do we make it about other introducing some people to other people and building community? Because most of the people that we have relationships with or that we're friends with are mainly immigrants or expats. So nobody is from here, or Dutch people who are very international minded. So, given that people were so interested in it, and the American friends that were missing Mexican food, and then the Europeans that so intrigued by it, we said, okay, let's do a supper club where we invite whoever fits around the table, friends and friends of friends. We make a really elaborate, like, four-course meal. And we explain what's the origin of the dish. Where did the recipe come from? Was it my recipe or a chef's or my mom's? We go through the ingredients and then we explain the origin of the ingredients, right? The jitomate, the tomatillo, the mole, why mole takes so long and why it used to be a wedding dish. So we go into all of these different things, and it's been really great. So we have one coming up in March. It's been really great, but it's also for me and maybe my husband, but more for me, it keeps me connected to my culture. It also helps me show off my culture. And it's really bringing people together. So I really love those components of the supper club.
I love it. As you're speaking, all I can think about is like water for chocolate and just the power of food to just completely enamor someone, right? So this is
Yeah.
beautiful. Okay, and something else that you're really passionate about is supporting women and especially Latinas on how to lead with purpose and intentionally. So
Right.
tell me why you're passionate about this.
I, in my sort of time off and pivoting to being a consultant, I decided I didn't want to go back in-house and didn't want to work for anybody, but I wanted to work with clients and on projects where I added the most value. And it took me a while to get there. And I was, networking with my colleagues in the US and trying to meet people here and, sort of positioning my marketing communication strategy work, right? And in those conversations, I was catching up with friends and colleagues, ex clients and ex bosses, and all that stuff. I kept falling into the same conversation with people, and especially Latinas. And the conversation was, I'm having a hard time communicating my worth and and what the value that I bring to my job, and I'm being, you name it, overlooked for the promotion. People don't see me as an executive potential. I'm trying to translate my skills to being an entrepreneur. So all of these things kept coming up as we were having a normal catch up. So um, I fell into helping a couple of people sort of communicate their brand at that time. It was like helping them communicate so they could get sort of whatever they were going after. And then I realized I have 25 years of experience communicating, helping communicate for some of the top brands, organizations, companies in the world. And I was very centered on brand communications. What if I take that and apply it to helping individuals, in particular women? So I kind of took everything that I had worked on in the past, put together a methodology
Hmm.
and started testing it, beta testing it with people that would ask for help. And I would do it gladly. And it gave me a chance to sort of prove that this methodology was working, see some results, be able to keep in touch with people to see how it was going. But in all of this, I felt like every woman that I talked to was super accomplished, deserved whatever they were going after, but had a really hard time putting words around their worth and around their talents and around what they deserved, right? And I think I finally came to the realization when I pivoted to consulting that I no longer wanted to be the chief communications officer. I no longer wanted to be an executive. I no longer wanted to be the boss of a big team. But I want to help the woman that does. So if
Hmm.
I don't want that anymore, and I've realized it and I've sort of embraced that, then my goal is to, whether it's helping someone voluntarily or helping them as part of the work that I do in consulting, I'm going to make sure that I'm doing my absolute best to help that woman achieve the professional goal that she wants to achieve. And I also, Brenda, how we're raised, we're raised to be thankful that we're in the room, and we're raised to accept the way things are, and we're raised to believe the boss. And I think after 25 years of being both in corporate America and being sort of in leadership positions in the United States, you realize that that's bullshit, and that has limited many of us from really achieving what our potential is and for really getting the opportunities that we deserve, because we have been taught to act a certain way, to speak a certain way, to not rock the boat, to, a number of different things we're asked to. I'm not saying all women, all Latinas feel this way, but there's an element of that, surely, in my experience. But in addition to that, I think we're not taught to be boastful in the way that our male counterparts are, and we're not taught to be boastful in the way that maybe non-Latinas are, right? Or given the permission to. So I really felt that I had this experience. I have a talent for this, and there's a lot of people that could benefit from this, and it's not personal branding or executive visibility for the sake of personal visibility. It's for the sake of really achieving your professional goals.
Yeah, and maybe a way to like I think what you painted was so it's probably resonating with a lot of people that like women that are extremely talented that they can do the work and just knowing that there's this barrier that you're helping them get over, which is
Yes,
how do we communicate that in a way that still feels authentic, that still and that gets us through the door, right? That gets us to
right,
we can
right,
accomplish it, we could do it, but we're being passed up because we don't know how to say it. So this is
right,
really
right.
powerful. What are some of the things you're running into? Like, what are some of the common pitfalls or, yeah, is there anything that you sort of patterns that you're observing?
So I'll paint the big picture and then I'll get into the specific. I feel that all of us are like a puzzle that we create. We put the pieces together throughout our life and our journey. And at some point, that puzzle that you love, you break up the pieces and then you come back to it and you want to piece it back together. You know all the pieces that are there. You know how to build a puzzle. You might not know what piece to start with and what's the second piece. So everybody has the pieces to accomplish their personal brand. They just don't have maybe the clarity. So I'm just helping them put the puzzle together. Everybody has the answer to what I'm helping them build, right? They all have, it's their experience, it's their background, it's their accomplishments, it's their values, that sort of thing. What I'm coming across are a couple of things is that individuals and women in particular don't see visibility as leadership. And I 100% think visibility is leadership. That's the first thing. The second thing is that there's this idea, especially now with social media, that um, executive visibility or personal branding is for influencers, CEOs, famous people, and it's for everybody else except me.
Mm,
And it's about boasting because that's how it feels when people see people that are really into thought leadership and that sort of thing online. So it kind of like scares a lot of people and women to say, ugh, I don't want to go through this. I don't want to be boastful. I don't want to be out front and center. And it's not about that, at least not in my practice. And in my practice, I really tell people your personal brand is your reputation. And by that, I mean it's what people say when you're not in the room.
mm,
It's what people say about you that you don't say to them, or the gaps that you leave for them to interpret.
mm,
So if we're not building our own narrative and telling our own story, someone else is. And they're not trying to be malicious, and nobody's trying to misrepresent you. They're just simply communicating what you communicate to them or what you don't communicate to them.
mm,
Therefore,
mhm.
they're making assumptions about who you are, where you want to be, what you do, and that sort of thing. So I think those are the main things that I'm encountering. And in my practice, what I tell women all the time is the way I approach personal branding is the intersection of your personal values and your professional goals. And I think for a lot of people, they say, well, personally, I believe this, but professionally, I believe this. And I think that's wrong. I think that what you believe and what you value is uniquely you, no matter if you're in a professional setting or if you're in a personal setting. And if you really want to be your most authentic self and give the most of you, you have to bring your personal values into your professional setting. And you have to inform whatever you're trying to accomplish with your values, because otherwise you're living separate lives, or otherwise you're falling into what some people do and they're building a persona, and that's a big challenge to try to keep up with. It's
Mhm.
kind of like you're trying to be something you're not, or you're trying to be all things to all people. And if you think about successful brands, not personal brands, but say the successful brands are the ones that really focus in and say, this is what we stand for, and this is who we're selling to, and this is what we're about, and this is what we're going to communicate. We can't communicate to the world. We are going to communicate to our target audience. So
Yeah.
it's a little bit of what I'm finding right now.
Yeah, and it's not like this idea of like keeping up two personas or three sounds so exhausting. So it also sounds very liberating to find a way to find that intersection and bring those two things together. I
Yeah.
love that. And maybe if you can give us like two or three tips for anyone that's just like, well, what is my personal brand, or how do I even start this exploration?
Yeah, I think a good time to start. It's a little bit like when you start the year and you say, okay, what is my word of the year? What is my vision
Mhm.
board, or whatever exercise you do, right? It's a little bit like that. But I think your personal brand becomes even more important when the stakes are high, right? When you're about to change jobs, or you just got laid off, or you're trying to pivot to an entrepreneur, to go through a series of exercises that help you get in tune with who you are right now professionally. And what I tell people to start with is, what is your goal? Right? Start with that. And the goal could be, I'm looking for a new job in finance. Or it could be, I want to pivot to X. Or it could be whatever, I want to get promoted to vice president. Whatever it is, like really clearly identify your goal right now. And then you do a deep assessment of who you are right now in your life. And that is, what are your 3 to 5 values? What are your strengths? I always tell all my clients, tell me your superpower. What's the magic that you bring that only you bring, right? What are your differentiators? So, kind of pulling all this information, go to your CV, go to your latest performance review. If you've done something like StrengthsFinder or Myers-Briggs, take everything out, like kind of like do a strategy session for yourself and take everything out, and start articulating, sort of putting together your puzzle, right? Like what is the story you're trying to tell based on the goal and your personal values, right? Like based on those two things as the main pillars, with all this information that you have in front of you, what is the story now that you need to tell in order to achieve that professional goal? And I always say, once you have that and maybe some feedback from some people, I think is really important because um, not because you're trying to get negative feedback, because sometimes there's blind spots and sometimes we have gaps. Sometimes we think everybody knows that we do X, Y, and Z, and nobody knows that we do it because we never talk about it or we never show it. Or everybody knows that I have a certificate in this and nobody knows that. Or someone says, you know, you're amazing at problem solving, you're really great during a crisis, you're da da da, and you never even thought of yourself as someone with that sort of strength or magic or power, right? So I think it's really important to bring in some external feedback. And then I tell people to really sit down and think about an elevator pitch that is not, hi, I'm so and so, I'm an accountant, and I work for so and so company, but really about how am I going to introduce myself in a way that tells the person that the person thinks, I want to know more. I want to know more about this person. This is really intriguing. And it's starting with, I'm passionate about being a champion for women and leveraging my communication skills so they could be the best version of themselves. Like really talking in terms of what you do, what's your purpose, tying in your purpose to it, and really introducing yourself in a way that demonstrates your value, demonstrates your strengths and differentiators, and the solutions that you could bring because of that, right? So I do think that it's a mindset shift. And it is a little bit more about stepping into your authentic self unapologetically and really being not only doing that, but I think the other piece that people forget when they're in it, say they come, they do this work, is consistency. It is being consistent. If you say, like, this is who I am and this is what I do, you have to say it all the time in the same way over and over again so people really, really understand it. And you have to show up that way, right? Walk the talk also. Like, so if you claim to be X, Y, and Z, it really should be who you are because you need to walk around being and acting and saying things this way all the time if you're going to be authentic and if you're really going to be sort of true to your personal brand.
Wonderful. Okay, you've given us so many great nuggets. And I think, I mean, there's so much there, but what I'm taking away is like what we're not saying. What we're
Yeah,
not saying, right? And just assuming that people know the skills, the strength, the power that you have.
yeah,
I think that's a really that's for me, that's my homework. It's like, okay, what am I not saying? So I
yeah.
think that's really, really helpful. Okay, like I said, you've given us so many great little nuggets, and I people are going to know to get in touch with you to do more of this. And I know you've even done some in-person events in Amsterdam.
Yeah.
Maybe you'll be doing some other virtual sort of opportunities so that folks here can also tap into your expertise. So where can people get connected to you?
So my email is Zandra at zwcompany.com. I'm on LinkedIn as Zandra Zuno, my maiden name. I didn't change that on LinkedIn. So in those two ways, I think it's the easiest ways to be in touch with me.
Yes, I love it. Okay, before I let you go, we do this fun rapid fire set of questions. And it's just whatever
I
comes to
love it.
mind. So first is like matraca, your Mexican sound maker. Like what is something that you're celebrating that gets your matraca?
So right now I'm celebrating, like a lot of us are celebrating, Bad Bunny.
Yeah. Gosh, wasn't that
And you,
electrifying?
I know, I think he just infused the world with much needed love and hugs and positivity and all these things. Um but uh and I had never been like a big fan of his, and until this last record came out, I really gravitated to the music. But seeing everything that he's done this year and sort of leading up to the Grammys and then leading up to um the halftime show at the Super Bowl, it's just incredible how uh, universal his message has been and how much of the world has embraced it, and how much the United States and non-Latinos, non-Puerto Ricans have embraced it. But as it relates to the work that I do and day out, I just used it I had a virtual workshop with an organization last week, and I just used him as an example of a master class in personal branding.
Totally.
Talk about unapologetic, not compromising. I'm not singing in English. I'm not going to talk in English. I'm not going to perform in the United States. I'm going to do whatever I want. I am going to break barriers as it relates to gender fluidity, as it relates to the genre that I sing in, as it relates to what people think about Puerto Rico. Talk about like really stepping into his personal brand, being who he is 100% of the time and not caring and being successful at it, right? That's the thing. I think that's the people often say, well, if I show my true self, then I'm not going to get this and I'm not going to get that and they're going to I'm going to turn them off. No, there's an audience for you, and Bad Bunny proved it. And everything he does, every decision he makes is a testament to his integrity of staying true to himself, and not compromising. So I think if there's any sort of celebration of someone, it's him right now, for sure.
Absolutely. Yeah, perfect. It really perfectly illustrates everything that you're about. I love that. Okay, and then opposite of that, what goes in la basura? It could be a thought, it could be a person, it could be a place, a thing. What goes in la basura what you're done with?
I'm done with these powerful, greedy men all over the world that are um, just horrible.
Hmm.
General terms, right? I think a lot of what we're seeing right now in the United States and globally, if you think about the root of everything, I do think it's greed. And for some reason, there's a lot of men at the center of this, men in power at the center of this. And you see that in the United States. But, my issue also, because of where I live and proximity, is sort of Russia and the situation of the occupation of Ukraine. That's on our doorsteps as well. So you're seeing these play out and all over the world of what's happening. So I'm just tired. I think we need more women leaders, and I think we need more compassion and empathy, and I think we need a little bit more sort of being global citizens and caring more. So I'm just done. Every story seems to be about greed, and these powerful men.
Amen to that. Absolutely. And then what is something that's been inspiring you lately?
Art. I think I've always loved art. I've always gravitated to visiting museums, and at some point I tried to learn how to paint, and I've always gravitated. And I think here, because of being able to travel to so many places, because it's just easy in Europe to jump on a train, or everything's like a 1.5 hour flight anywhere. I've really dug deep into catching as many art exhibits as I can. And there's these studies going around about how art helps cure illnesses and cure loneliness. And I think it's absolutely true. I mean, there's something about going and seeing an exhibit or an artist that you like, and coming out and just, it's like walking outside and getting fresh air. So I absolutely love it. And I think it's my fuel for creativity, but it's also my fuel for mental sanity, and inspiration in general.
I love it. So art heals. I love it. I
I
love
think
it.
art heals.
Well, this conversation has healed me. I've really enjoyed being able to talk to you, Zandra. This is
Uh,
amazing.
Thank
And
you,
I hope to
Brenda.
come to one of your supper club one of these
Please
days.
come visit us in Amsterdam, and yeah, I'll keep you updated on all of it.
I love it. Okay, well, thank you so much for being here. Have a beautiful day.